Sambanani Molweni, Goeiemorgen, and a warm welcome to Lentswe, the voice of Transnet. I'm your host, Vuitumela Makokwani, and today I have a question for you. Does language shape our identity and success? Think about it. Our mother tongues carry history, identity, and culture. But in a world where dominant languages dictate business and education, how do we ensure our indigenous languages thrive? Today, we're honored to have Yanga Soji, a communication specialist in the content management and language services portfolio at Transnet, to help us unpack this important discussion. Yanga, welcome to Lentswe. Thank you for availing yourself.
Molo Boitumelo.
Let's get straight into it. International Mother Language Day is about celebrating linguistic diversity, but many African languages are declining. What is your relationship with language?
Boitumelo, thank you for that question. On a personal note for me, I'm grateful now that I'm older and I look back to have grown up in a household where I learned to speak my mother tongue as a child, which is Xhosa, and of course learn English at school. And when I would later move to Gauteng and then discover other languages, that was interesting because remember I grew up basically in a community of one language, and then I moved here and then everyone was speaking different languages, but it didn't really intimidate me, it fascinated me. And even a day at Transnet, walking to Transnet at any given time, I'll say molo, someone else says dumelang, someone else says someone else will respond in whatever language. So it affects every part of our lives.
Thank you for that. Now, Transnet has a language policy in place. Can you tell us more about it and why it's important in an organization like ours?
Boitumelo, yes, that is true. We do have a language policy. It was signed, I think, late last year, and it governs the way we communicate. Here at Transnet, remember, we are a state-owned enterprise, which means we report to the government of South Africa. So it is a constitutional mandate that we ensure that we represent all languages here at Transnet. This policy, it applies to all employees of Transnet. It applies to all oral and written communication. It includes also sign language and Braille. We'll all remember that sign language was made. It was officially added that's our 12th official language last year. So we also do incorporate that into our policy. So how this policy works is quite interesting because we are this huge company that's based everywhere across the country. And I had mentioned when I was speaking about my own experience where I grew up, we had a particular dominant language. So we are aware of how our province is structured, that if we go to KZN, go to Northern Cape, go to the Northwest, the dominant languages. So we actually divide our policy into provincial guidelines. So you'll find that there are dominant languages. For example, if we're communicating in KZN, we'll definitely prioritize isiZulu, that is the dominant language. In Mpumalanga, there'll be Sepedi, Siswati, Sindebele. The Northern Cape, there'll be Afrikaans, Setswana. Western Cape, Afrikaans, Xhosa. All while English remains the dominant language because that is the language that we're mandated to communicate in primarily. So yeah, that's basically just some of how the policy works.
I love that. It brings forth a culture of inclusivity, especially now that you are observing other regions whereby people can better articulate themselves in, for example, Zulu and KZN.
Definitely.
So, do you think the corporate environment can truly embrace multilingualism without compromising efficiencies?
Oh, that's a big question, Boitumelo. I think maybe 20, 30 years ago, it definitely was not. But we're experiencing a lovely resurgence of culture and authenticity and including our languages. So even beyond the Transnet space, if you watch television during prime time with your family, you'll see that an insurance ad. If you're watching Mzansi Magic, let's say, for example, you'll see that they're selling you insurance in isiZulu, in isiSotho, in isiXhosa, depending what channel you're on. So it's not even just a Transnet language policy. You'll hear it on your radio, you'll see it on your TV, you'll see it on social media. We are a very intentional nation when it comes to representation. Because again, you also can't sell me a product in a language that I don't understand. So also for capitalism, they have a lot to gain by also including languages. So I like that the people who have to, and there are those who actually want to. And for us, like I said, because we're a government institution, it's our responsibility. But yeah, it's an important thing. It makes us us. It makes us South Africa, because there's no country like ours. Literally, you can be sitting in a room and we can all speak 7 different languages and understand each other.
Very interesting. That's a very invigorating statement, actually. It just comes back and resonates with that. English is not really the ends all, after all.
Definitely.
So, speaking of impact, do you think language affects career progression in corporate spaces? Are employees who speak dominant languages at an advantage?
I think that's an interesting question, and it depends how you look at it. Someone may say it's a glass half empty, a glass half full. Again, Transnet. If now I decide to transfer to TNPA in Durban, I'm moving to KZN, and the dominant language there is isiZulu. If you move right now to TPT in Ngqura, the dominant language is isiXhosa. Same, if you move up north, there's Sepedi. Those are languages to consider. So I think we've seen it that in an interview, for example, they'll be specific in maybe in the job specification that maybe must know particular languages. And of course, there's English. We can't run away from it. For South Africa, you do need to be a bit content and context specific. So it is an advantage, but I don't think it will necessarily exclude one. But I think it should be encouraging, because if you're a multilingual person or you can sort of fit in anywhere, then that means you are a stronger candidate. So it's an interesting conversation, because most of us are looking at our university transcripts, we're looking at the number of degrees that we have, and we forget that you can actually be invited to an interview and the language that you speak can actually impact how far you go. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. So it will depend. Some people may say it does discriminate, but I'd say it is necessary. We have a job to do, and we reach out to so many people in our communities. So we have a responsibility to ensure that they hear us and understand us. And where does it go back? To language.
Wow. I think you've definitely highlighted something very important there, especially with applying for posts in a totally different region as opposed to Gauteng. I mean, I am Northern Sotho speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I would even survive there. It would be a challenge.
Mm.
But okay, let's continue. With technology shaping the way we communicate, do you think digital platforms can be used to preserve indigenous languages?
Language is a gift. It's a gift that keeps giving to generations and generations. Before my time, my forefathers, way before me, were speaking isiXhosa. Your forefathers were speaking Northern Sotho. And then the children coming after us and their children also need to keep our languages alive. And we're living in this extremely digital world. TikTok, Twitter, WhatsApp. So how then do we ensure that the next generation preserves that language? Is to reach them where they are. You know, the platforms are different. We grew up in the era of magazines and newspapers, but now that unfortunately has phased out. There's new platforms. So this is where language comes in also, that the platforms are different, but the language remains the same, because language doesn't really change. It's constant. So why can't we have 5-year-olds watching educational videos in their home languages? I mean, even on TikTok, it's such a fun platform. People are doing videos in their languages. Even if you don't know what they're saying, you'll go into the comments and someone will translate for you. So it's actually happening. It's happening every day, but we may not really pick it up, but it's definitely happening. Technology is there to push our language agenda forward.
Definitely in agreement. I love the aspect where you infiltrated TikTok into the conversation.
Yeah.
TikTok is also very innovative. You can see a lot of videos where they're in a lot of different languages, even
Definitely.
overseas. So definitely in agreement there. So before we wrap up, what's one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from today's discussion?
I'd like everyone to just take a moment and think about it, because language is ingrained in us. It's ingrained in us. It's part of our fabric. But I would like us to be more intentional in how we use it. Teach someone else, maybe outside of your family. And just the message of this holiday, this day that's observed by the UN, is to just ensure and cultivate and take it forward. Be proud. Be proud of your mother tongue.
Absolutely love that. That's a very important message, Yanga. Thank you so much for availing yourself. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and reminding us of the power of language. To our listeners, let's continue this conversation. What does your mother language mean to you? Share your thoughts with us on Viva Engage using hashtag Lentswe podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up to date with episodes shared externally as well. Until next time, stay proud, stay connected, and keep your voice alive.